My name is Ethan, and I used to think failure was my destiny. Everything I touched seemed to fall apart. No matter how hard I tried, success always slipped away, just when I thought I was close. I grew up in a small town with my mother. She worked at a sewing shop, day and night, just to pay my school fees. We didn't have much, but she always said, "Ethan, you don't need money to be great. You just need courage to try again." I wanted to make her proud. I wanted to show her that her sacrifices were not wasted. But life had other plans. When I was in high school, I failed my math exam, not once, but 3 times. My classmates laughed. "Ethan, maybe you should give up," one of them said, and for a moment I almost believed him. But when I came home crying, my mother didn't scold me. She hugged me and whispered, "Failing doesn't make you weak." Quitting does. Her words stayed in my heart like a small flame, a light that refused to die. Years passed, and I reached college. I wanted to become an engineer. I studied late nights, reading old, torn books. I couldn't afford new ones. I often sat outside the classroom because I couldn't pay the full fee. When exams came, I worked harder than ever. But when results were announced, my name was missing from the list. I had failed again. That night, I sat alone under the streetlight outside our small home. I felt like a loser. Maybe they were right. Maybe success wasn't meant for people like me. Just then, my mother walked out and placed her hand on my shoulder. She didn't say much, only one sentence. Greater than, "If you can fail again and still try again, then you're already stronger than those who never fall." So, I tried again. I studied for another year, while doing part-time jobs, cleaning tables at a cafe, carrying boxes at a store, anything that helped pay for my books. Sometimes, when I looked at my reflection in the cafe window, I saw tired eyes. But behind those eyes, I also saw hope. A quiet belief that maybe, one day, it would all be worth it. A year later, I took the exam again. This time, I passed, barely. It wasn't a big score, but to me, it felt like winning a war. When I showed the result to my mother, tears filled her eyes. She smiled and said, "See, Ethan? The boy who fails again and again is the boy who never gives up." But life wasn't done testing me. In my second year of college, my mother got sick. The doctor said she needed surgery. I had no money. I skipped classes and worked double shifts. I slept only a few hours each night. I didn't care about myself. I just wanted her to get better. When exam time came again, I was exhausted. I could barely keep my eyes open during the test. A week later, I failed, again. This time, it broke me. I sat beside my mother's bed and cried, "I'm sorry, Mom. I keep failing you." She took my hand weakly and said, "No, Ethan. You fail because you fight. The only people who never fail are the ones who never try." Those words felt like magic, painful, but powerful. After her surgery, she began to recover slowly. I returned to college, more determined than ever. I stopped caring about what people said. I just kept moving, step by step, no matter how many times I fell. Sometimes I failed again. Sometimes I succeeded. But I learned one truth. Failure doesn't define you. Your response to it does. Then came the final year, the hardest exam of my life. I studied for months, day and night. I still remember sitting in the library until midnight, whispering to myself, "Greater than you've come too far to give up now. when the results were announced. I stood in front of the board, heart pounding, and then I saw it. My name at the top of the list. I blinked twice, thinking it was a dream, but it was real. I ran home, shouting, "Mom, I did it. I passed." She hugged me tightly, her eyes full of tears. "Greater than I always knew you would, Ethan," because the boy who failed again and again finally learned how to rise. That night, as I looked at the stars through our window, I realized something beautiful. Every failure had pushed me toward this moment. Every tear, every sleepless night, every painful word from others, all of it had built the person I was now. But I didn't know. My biggest test was still ahead of me. A few months later, my mother's health worsened again. I had just received a job offer at a good company. I was happy, but scared to leave her alone. She smiled weakly and said, "Go, Ethan. You've worked for this. Don't worry about me. Just make me proud." Those were her last words before I left home. When I returned a week later, she was gone. When I reached home, the house was silent. Too silent. Her sewing machine stood in the corner, just as she had left it, the needle still threaded, the cloth half-stitched. On the table lay a cup of tea, untouched. I called her name again and again, but there was no answer. My neighbor walked in with tears in her eyes. "Ethan, your mother passed away peacefully this morning. She was proud of you till her last breath." The words hit me like thunder. I fell to my knees, crying so hard that it felt like the air had left my body. She was gone, the only person who believed in me when no one else did. The next few weeks felt like walking through a storm. I went to work, but my heart wasn't there. Everything reminded me of her voice, her laughter, her dreams for me. I felt lost again, like that same boy who had failed so many times before. But one evening, while cleaning her room, I found a small notebook under her pillow. It was full of her handwriting. On the first page, it said, "My son, Ethan. I know you will read this one day. If I am not there to see your success, don't be sad, because every time you rise after a fall, I'll still be watching, proud and smiling." Tears ran down my face as I read her words. That night, I made her one promise. "I will never stop trying, Mom. Not until I make your words come true." From that day, something inside me changed. I stopped running from failure. I started learning from it. Each mistake became a lesson. Each fall became a step forward. At work, I made many errors in the beginning. I wasn't perfect, far from it. But I remembered what my mother had taught me. Failing doesn't make you weak. Quitting does. So I stayed late every day, improving my skills. While others left early, I studied manuals, watched tutorials, and asked questions. Months passed, and my hard work began to show. One day, my boss called me into his office. "Ethan," he said, "you've improved a lot. I'm promoting you to team leader." I couldn't believe it. From a boy who failed again and again to a man being promoted. It felt like a small victory, but I knew it was just the beginning. A few years later, I started my own small company, focused on helping students who struggled in school like I once did. We offered free evening classes for poor students, teaching them not just subjects, but confidence. One evening, a shy boy named Daniel came to me. He said, "Sir, I keep failing. Maybe I'm not smart enough." I smiled gently and said, "You know, Daniel, I once failed 3 times in math, and I cried just like you. But look at me now. You see, failure isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. He looked at me in surprise. Really, sir? You failed too? I nodded. Yes, again and again. But I learned something important. When life knocks you down, it's testing how badly you want to rise. The boy smiled slowly, as if a spark had been lit inside him. Years passed, and my company grew. We opened learning centers in other cities. Every time a student succeeded, I felt like my mother's words were coming true. Through each of them, on the 5th anniversary of my company, we organized a small ceremony. We invited all the students and their parents. When I stood on the stage, looking at the faces in front of me, I realized something powerful. Each of them was fighting their own battle, failing, learning, and rising, just like I once did. I began my speech. I once thought failure was the end, but today I know it's the beginning of everything. If you fail, don't be ashamed. Be proud. Because failure means you tried. And if you try again, it means you're brave. The audience clapped, some with tears in their eyes. And in that moment, I felt her presence, my mother, as if she was sitting among them, smiling proudly. That night, I walked home under the stars and whispered, "Mom, I did it. I didn't give up." I looked at the sky. Maybe she could hear me. Maybe she already knew. I realized then that success isn't about winning once. It's about standing up 100 times after falling 99. It's about believing in yourself when no one else does. Years later, I visited my old home. The sewing machine was still there, covered in dust. I cleaned it gently and placed a small note beside it. To the woman who taught me that failure isn't the end, it's the road to strength. And I smiled, because I finally understood. I didn't fail again and again. I learned again and again until I succeeded. Moral of the story: failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it. Every time you fall and stand up again, you grow stronger. Keep trying, even when the world doubts you. Because the ones who fail again and again are the ones who rise higher than anyone ever expected.